Thanks for being here at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, we take attendance at these things, and so you all will have a gold star in your files. I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion. If for those of you who were at the opening plenary, Ehab al-Shihabi from Al Jazeera presented a big idea about creating a television news channel for the 21st century. And then yesterday, I think there was a very spirited discussion on this stage about the future of television news and an interesting contrast between Lawrence O'Donnell from MSNBC and Ehab. And then, of course, for this morning's discussion, we have Ryssdal from Marketplace, who I feel like I ride home with every afternoon in the car. So thanks for coming, and we look forward to a great discussion.
Terrific, Jim. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. We do appreciate it. The introductions, I'm going to guess, are not needed, but just in case, Ehab is technically the Executive Director for International Operations at Al Jazeera. More to the point and more for our discussion this morning, he is the guy starting up Al Jazeera America in what, a month and something? August 20th, right?
Correct.
I'm amazed you have time to be here, honestly, because I imagine you have a lot to do. Or, as he was called yesterday in a panel, Mr. Al Jazeera.
Exactly.
So we're going to spend, I don't know, half an hour, Ehab and I, talking about that, talking about how you go about doing what he's trying to do. And then we'll open it up to your questions. I have promised to get you guys out of here by 8:50, so we'll get that taken care of. There's lots to do. I was thinking about how to start this and about how to get into this conversation. And then I started thinking about the environment that you are going to enter into, the American cable news environment, which is cannibalistic and opinionated and right and left and in some ways completely bonkers. Why do you want to be a part of that?
Correct. First of all, let me thank everybody who attended the session yesterday and the day before. I received a fantastic tweet from everybody, so that was grateful. The second thing, by the way, I've been advised by my colleague in Al Jazeera to smile, so I'm going to keep smiling. I'm going to keep smiling all the time. If I don't smile, remind me to smile again. So that's the other thing.
I'll do that.
Okay. Now, for Al Jazeera America, I mean, there is definitely a void on the landscape of the America. Okay, I am not entering the landscape of opinionated news. I am not entering the landscape of the infotainment. I'm entering a landscape which, in my opinion, doesn't exist, or it exists, but not in the level that the American audience deserve. So the idea here is we are entering for a market that consider underserved. Again, our research indicated that roughly around 50 million demanding
50 million?
50 million.
Okay.
Correct. Demanding, fact-based, informative, with heavy on the investigation side of journalism. So they need real information and with a detailed information that inform the American audience, that reflect their issues, and also at the same time reflect their happiness. So it will motivate them, but at the same time also it raises their issues, and we drill on the detail to inform them and recommend certain advices for them. So the landscape exists, the demand exists, it's been proven, and also it's been proven on the live streaming that we have for Al Jazeera English.
Yeah.
We've been receiving tremendous demand on Al Jazeera English. 40% of the live streaming, 40% of the live streaming came from the US market. So the research, the landscape, the focus group that we have conducted, our experience since 2006 with Al Jazeera English indicated there is a space and there is a huge demand for that type of news. This is why I don't smile, because we are a serious news.
Well, so let's get back to the smiling thing, actually, because it kind of speaks to a broader problem, and I'll be curious to get your take on it. I wonder whether you guys, with the name Al Jazeera,
sure,
and with the baggage that it carries in this country, don't have something of a branding problem, and you're going to have a really tough time as you launch getting people to tune in and get past the Al Jazeera, whatever it is that you are.
Let me just take you a little bit about Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, it's a media network. Al Jazeera has roughly, let's say, around 27 channels. It has many news channels. It has many documentary channels. It has many children channels. It has many sport channels. Also, Al Jazeera has a strong training center for the media, has a research center, and at the same time, Al Jazeera, it is in more than 270 million households around the world. And Al Jazeera operating from more than 130 countries. It has 70 bureaus around the world, and now we are establishing at the launch more than 12 bureaus in the United States. So what does that mean? It's not about the bureaus. It means that you have original content, a news gathering power hub that it will inform the audience. Now, if you go outside the United States and you ask everybody in Asia, I've been in Asia, in Europe, I've been in Europe, the penetration rate that we have in this market across all the continent, it's phenomenal. The reputation there is phenomenal. Now, I don't agree with the concept that the brand reputation in America is an issue. I will let you, if we segment the stakeholders and if we decided to divide different buckets, let's say the journalist has nothing more than the respect for Al Jazeera. Ask any journalist, they will tell you, Al Jazeera, they know how to do it, they have a quality journalism. If you ask the cable operators, currently with all what we have done, we build a continuous dialogue with the cable operator. I think, in my opinion, we have a strong relationship with the cable operators. If we went at the consumer side, yes. Like any startup channel, like any news channel, some of them, they love you. Some of them, they says you are controversial. Some of them, they have different perceptions. The idea here is, there is the perceptions, but on the other hand, if you watch the coverage from Wall Street to New York Times to the Atlantic to all these coverage, you will see that 80% of our coverage is favorable coverage.
Favorable, and what does that mean? 80% of your coverage, it's favorable to you?
No. 80% of the coverage on the media that talking about Al Jazeera, it's favorable. Respect, understanding that it is a quality journalism, understanding it's in-depth, understanding it's unbiased. So I think I'm very confident that Al Jazeera name, the time they watch Al Jazeera, the time they taste Al Jazeera America, they will accept it and they will become loyalists and followers.
What's that landscape you were talking about going to look like? Are you going to fire up a 2-hour morning show from 7 to 9 to compete with Good Morning America? Or are you going to have somebody in the afternoons competing with Wolf Blitzer in the CNN newsroom or wherever he is these days?
Correct. I mean, we are not on the business model to compete. We are on the business model really to inform the American audience. We are in the business model to provide a quality journalism. We are in the business model at the same time to be profitable, but not on the account of the quality of journalism. If I give you a little bit about the grid, the high flavor of the grid, of course, we're going to be rolling news, 24/7 rolling news. We're going to have documentaries, original content documentaries. We're going to have original content lifestyle. But if we see what we're going to bring, at 6 o'clock a.m., we're going to have morning news. Around 12 o'clock, we're going to have documentaries, long format documentaries. And then if we said around 7 or 9 p.m., we're going to have the news hour, our flagship show for the news hour. And since we said it's a rolling news, we're going to have not 18 hours of advertising. We're going to have roughly around 8 hours of advertising. So it will not be boring the audience.
Which is good.
I think it's absolutely fantastic based on the feedback that we got.
If you have to fill 24/7, though, as cable news outlets do have to do in this country, are we going to see the George Zimmerman trial? Are we going to see Jodi Arias or whatever that poor woman's name is? I mean, there's content that you have to put out there. What's that content going to be?
Correct. The content mainly will be focusing on the following. Number one is it will focus on the most pressing issues that impact the American audience, the most pressing issues that impact the American audience and their lifestyle, in very informative, heavy on the investigative side. The other thing also what we're going to cover a lot of provocative thought that will encourage the American audience to think and reflect and also participate and enrich the content of Al Jazeera America. Also, we're going to have local coverage that reflect the community voice. It will reflect also the interconnect concept between the domestic coverage and the international coverage that impact the American lifestyle.
None of this comes cheap, you know. Investigative journalism is expensive. Hiring new talent is expensive. Starting up these new bureaus in New York and Washington, the new set that you guys have in Washington in the museum is expensive. How much is Al Jazeera spending to start Al Jazeera America?
Al Jazeera America is doing a serious investment. So this is not just a trial and error. We are not recruiting people for trial and error. We are not coming here to survive. We are coming here to win the mind and the heart of the American audience, keep them informed. So this is a serious investment that we are doing. This is a serious business model that has been studied carefully into this one. So I'm not going to share the number that we are putting for that investment, but let me reflect, and maybe you can tell that the investment that we are doing, number one, is more than 800 seasoned journalists, cameramen, producers, operations, administrations. On the other hand, we are investing heavily on the investigative journalism side. This is what we believe one of the competitive advantage for Al Jazeera is the investigative journalism. This is where you get real news. This is where you get in-depth information. Also, we are investing heavily. In addition to our infrastructure, the international infrastructure of 70 bureaus, we are investing heavily at launch. Around 12 bureaus will be launching. The idea about 12 bureaus, it's not about prestige. The idea here is original content. We are not parachuting people. This is not our model. We station people there so they can connect with the community. They can reflect the voice of that community. They can share their happiness and motivate Americans about this. And also they can, share and raise the issues that matter to them. And the third component here really about the 12 bureaus is to be able, as we said, the original content, but at the same time, I just need to make sure it's easy to deploy for the other states. So we are very serious really of covering a news from coast to coast. It's not just covering New York, Washington, D.C., and just hit and run. Our intention really is to be after the fact, to be after the event and stay after the event for many, many months to reflect the human side of the story. And this is, again, as I said yesterday, what we did in Haiti. In Haiti, we did not consider this as a breaking news, hit and run. We consider this as a story that impacts American life, and it deserves to stay after the events and reflect all the issues that matter to them. Inform American, inform politicians, inform celebrities.
You know, the American news outlet that I would offer most closely models what I think you're trying to do, right? Long-term coverage, investigative work, inform, good content, all of that stuff. There's a case to be made that that's what PBS NewsHour does. That Jim Lehrer and his crew, all right, he's gone now, but that's what they are designed to do.
Sure.
And they are drowning in debt. They're not getting companies and corporations to underwrite them. Yes, you have government support from the government of Qatar, but how long will you give yourself to get this done before you can actually be profitable?
See, for PBS, let me just make a statement about PBS. I have nothing with full respect to PBS. You know what I mean? I love them, I watch them clearly. But our operating model, it's not 100% similar. Okay, number one is, yes, PBS is a long format. Al Jazeera is long format. But the differentiation here is, number one, is, again, I will repeat that, is the original content that we can get. Number two, heavy investment on the investigative journalism that PBS, they don't have that capacity. And number three really is, in my opinion, is the demographic they are talking to. I think when I watch PBS, I see the demographic more on the elite side, on the upscale side. We are not just going to cover the elite side, the upper scale side. We're going to cover the true mainstream. We're going to cover from coast to coast the average American, the mainstream, the area that nobody went there. We're going to reach to the area that nobody went there. We're going to reach Nashville. We're going to reach, Chattanooga. We're going to reach Denver. We're going to reach Detroit. We're going to reach all these communities and elevate their voice. They deserve to be reached out. They deserve to be, inspired. They deserve to have, issues discussed. I think, the industry here with the pressure about the cable operator that you have to cover celebrities and politicians. Yes, we're gonna cover politicians, celebrities, but in a way that inform the American audience. That's my opinion.
Who's your competition then? Who do you see out there in the American cable news environment? Or are you trying to do something else?
As I stated before, is if you analyze the industry landscape, the news industry landscape in America, you will see different categories, you will see different level. Again, I'm not speaking what I think, I'm speaking what the research indicated, the focus group, thought leadership that we have interacted with. You will see the following. You will see you have Fox News. It is very much opinionated in news, taking side, and they know how to serve their audience very well. Their demographic, in my opinion, is 59, 58 and above. Okay, so I'm not competing in that side. I am not opinionated. I am fact-based. I am unbiased. So I have in my opinion, different audience. Let's talk about MSNBC. Again, they are, having, their own view.
But here's the thing. Opinion-based is what succeeds in American cable news today. Fox News succeeds. MSNBC succeeds. CNN is killing itself trying to find that middle way. Opinionated succeeds. It works. The American public likes to hear people who agree with them.
I am not going to deny or debate that. But again, if you see the landscape, you will see a huge void. The key word here, you will see a huge void on the America that demand informative, in-depth, investigative journalism. Huge demand coming from them. Let's analyze their demographic. Their demographic is a young demographic from 25 to 50. Their demographic is technical savvy. Their demographic is family-oriented. Their demographic, they are a strong segment of America. Their demographic is they need information to make a decision that matter to them. So I'm not debating that Fox, MSNBC have their audience. My mission is not to convert their audience to me, although I am very confident some of their audience will come to Al Jazeera, but I am filling a big gap that currently exists.
If you don't want to be competitive with those groups then, how are you going to know you've succeeded? If you're not stealing their audience, how are you going to know you're doing what you set out to do?
Okay, so first of all, I am tapping into an audience that I consider my audience, which is the void that exists in the industry. That's my audience. One key element to measure my success is that audience, okay? Number two, to measure my success is not about the audience only. To measure my success is the quality of journalism and the standard of journalism that we are giving. Can the American audience, whether they are biased to Fox or MSNBC, can they see the difference between coverage of Al Jazeera and the coverage of the other channel? This is how I measure my success. Number three, the normal way how the industry measures their success is really about rating and the financial model they are generating. So again, I like rating, and we're gonna stick with the rating. I like money, we're gonna stick with the money, but there is a critical important piece that we don't want to miss. Accuracy, unbiased, in-depth, quality of journalism. Americans deserve quality of journalism.
So let me get back to my earlier point about unbiased and quality of journalism. I believe the hurdle you will face getting American audiences to tune into a channel named Al Jazeera is higher than you believe. Where do you go if that proves impenetrable?
First of all, I hear you carefully, and I hear you very well. I don't believe on this. The reason why, we have been doing since January until now, we've been doing reach out. And we've been doing reach out not just for New York City, Washington, D.C., LA. We've been reaching out in Denver, Detroit, and we are reaching out Chicago. We have reached out to many communities, some of them minority, some of them majority, etc. And we built an extensive dialogue, and we did a grassroots analysis. It's all shows, it's all indicate, do we have a bucket of resistance? Yes, but the majority is favorable. The majority of them is very curious and interested to see that product.
Let me change gears for a minute. You guys spent plus or minus $500 million, $400 million, $500 million to buy Current TV from Al Gore and Joel Hyatt, what, a year plus or minus?
I'm not going to disclose the number, so this
Plus-
is your
plus or minus.
assumption.
Plus or minus. Reports are, don't you love that, the reports are? This is what you had in mind. I mean, you bought Current TV for the network and for the placement on the cable networks, right? This is the fulfillment of that plan.
So you're again, I'm sorry, what's the question?
So when you bought Current TV from Al Gore for however much it was, this is the fulfillment of that purchase, right? This is why you bought it. This is what you're trying to do.
I mean, the concept was here. I mean, when the director general, he's a transformative thinker, and the first he analyzed the spectrum. We are everywhere, and he just raised the question, why we cannot be in the U.S. market? Ehab, team, the executive director, why we cannot be in the U.S. market? And what we did as a team, we went and we conduct heavy research, and the idea here was the idea. The obstacle is high because the industry is saturated with all the news, but the opportunity is great. And the question was, can we build or shall we go for buy? The build, it will take time. Going to the cable operators, and it's spent, the business case and show them the business case and all of this. It's a time consuming, you know what I mean? You can go and meet with them, and it will take you on average between a year, 2 years, 3 years to be able to build and convince them on the business model. Since the cable operator, there is no secret. I mean, the cost of the programming on the cable operator is very high. So there is a lot of push and back. What we did here is also, the option was buy, because I think it's short period. What you can do is buy, take the household, and start reprogramming the channel. And this is our competitive advantage of buying Current TV. You need to go for the aggressive model, which is risky, but at the same time, it's less time, or do you need to build that will take you for 3 to 5 years? I think our business case was, why not going for the model where we can buy and then reprogram to build Al Jazeera America? And I think, in my opinion, it was a smart decision and smart investment.
I'm going to open it up in just a second to your questions, so start thinking of what you want to ask Mr. Shihabi, sorry. How are you going to know you succeeded? How are you going to know you got it right?
Okay, again, as I said it, number one is the quality, the standard of journalism. Okay. Number two is how I think I'm succeeding, that we are following our vision and missions, and we are not really distracted from our vision and mission, as I stated, fact-based, unbiased, in-depth, interconnect concept between domestic and international news. Number three, winning the mind and the heart of the American, be able to inform them. And number 5 and 6, or 4 and 5, I forgot really, is also considered, the rating is very critical for us. The margin of the profit also is critical for us. But again, it's a trade-off formula between the quality of journalism and succeeding in the normal standard operating model from profitability and rating.
Have you hired somebody to run this thing for you yet? Because you're internationally focused. I mean, your job is international operations. Who's going to run this part of the thing?
As we state now, I mean, we recruited more than 650 staff. And as you can see, I mean, I can give you a strong name that, see, what we are having here in a simple term, we have a launch team, then consider diversified launch team, but at the same time, Al Jazeera America, it's American staff, American board, American advisory board. The American staff, they are already there. We have executive producers, we have producers, we have talent, we have journalists, and currently, in a matter of fact, they are already doing the piloting. They are doing roughly around 16-hour piloting for the news, and at the same time, they are doing piloting on the programming. The senior leadership has been identified. We are on the final stage of the negotiation with them, but the announcement will be coming soon.
To be clear, this is going to be American domestically produced programming, which is a switch from the original intent, as I understand it.
It's not a switch from the original intent. Our intent from the beginning, this is American channel for American audience, running by American staff, running by American board with the advisory board. The channel will cover domestic news as well as international news. The concept here is building the interconnect concept. Domestic news coverage, we don't believe you cover domestic news without the impact of the international news. And this is what we call it the interconnect concept. We have 70 bureaus. We have 12 bureaus here. We're going to bring original content that have a lot of domestic and have international news. It depends on the stories. It depends on the news. Sometimes you might have a breaking news happening somewhere overseas that it might take 80% of your programming. Sometimes you have a domestic news that will have 90% of the programming. We never decided this is 60-40. It is the interconnect concept. It's a domestic coverage and international coverage.
All right, let's go to your questions. Let's raise some hands. Do we have mic runners? Is that how we're going to do this? Yeah? So let's take them in the back in the corner there, please.
Two questions related. Is this like BBC at all, BBC or BBCA? And two, how are you going to assure the American audience that you keep saying it's factual and not opinionated, but what is the influence or lack of influence of the owner or owners of the network that they're not going to be influencing content?
Sure. That barrier I was talking about? There it is, right? So let's remind people who the owner of Al Jazeera is, and then answer his question, if you would.
Fantastic. But it's fascinating. Thank you very much for the questions, but I would love to highlight it. It's fascinating. He's asking me these questions, but maybe you never asked BBC about these questions.
Yeah. So, and he's comparing you to the BBC, which is a favorable comparison, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's good for you.
So the idea here is, I'm receiving these questions, but I don't think BBC is being asked these questions. The idea here is...
But BBC's been around for 80 years with a demonstrated track record, and you'll admit that Al Jazeera, in its original format in 2003 and 2004, had some controversial things put on its air.
I wouldn't admit that. Absolutely not.
Whether you admit it or not,
absolutely not,
doesn't take away from what happened in fact.
Fine. I mean, let the audience judge on this one. But let me go back again to the question. The question is, if you know the BBC model, it is Al Jazeera's similar model, almost. Number two, I am adhering to the US law. Am I right? This is an organization based in America, legal entity in America, adhering to the US law. And number three, which is very critical, is it has American board and it has advisory board. Number three, as usual, it's American staff, you know what I mean? It's run by American staff. It has an editorial board. At the operational level, they run it on a day-to-day basis into this one. So the firewall between influence and the editorial, it exists, and it strongly exists. And number two, what was the question number two? I'm sorry.
What I'm concerned about is you take the New York Post, or actually, even in some sense, the Wall Street Journal now.
Owned by Rupert Murdoch, just so everybody is.
You know, and there is an influence, whether it's the editorial page or content or what's shown or how it's presented by the owner. And so you keep saying, and I respect it, the advisory board, but the real question is who's going to control content?
See, I mean, it's simple answer. Who controls content? First of all, let me make sure this is an institution, has a strong code of ethics. And any staff, any American staff who join Al Jazeera, America, they have to adhere to the code of ethics. And number two, who will run it? I mean, we don't have the control and the censorship that maybe other organizations have. Who will run it is empowered executive producer. It's simple as that. Empower executive producers who can make the decisions and adhere to the vision and the mission of Al Jazeera America with a strong code of ethics.
Let's get somebody over here. In the back there, yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum wa mabruk kaman.
Alaykum assalam, and thank you very much.
I was with Al Jazeera English when it started, 2006,
Sure.
and it was a troubled birth and delivery, to put it mildly. What lessons have you learned from that experience that you may apply to the early weeks and months of Al Jazeera America? But also, what will be the nature of the interaction between Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera America in terms of sharing content and other
Absolutely.
interactions?
See, I mean, as you recall, Al Jazeera America, it has its own identity, am I right? And it has its own legal entity, it has its own staff. Having said that, I need to remind you about we are a network. And also we have to be cost efficient and cost effective. As we said, the interaction will be, Al Jazeera America will be heavily involved on covering domestic from coast to coast. And also we're gonna tap into Al Jazeera International and other channels that we have. We have Turkish, we have Al-Balkan, and we are opening more channels. And the interactions and the service level agreement between the two channels, it's been well defined. We have a strong infrastructures, 70 bureaus around the world. We're gonna tap into these bureaus. We're gonna tap into that original content, whether this is Al Jazeera Balkan, this is Al Jazeera Turk, this is Al Jazeera International. We have no restriction, as well as we define ourselves as Al Jazeera America with its strong governance structures and a service level agreement between the two channels. Then we have no constraint to do a sharing of the original content between them, because this is the power hub for Al Jazeera where we have. And regarding the lesson learned, I don't know about what's the trouble for Al Jazeera International. I'm not familiar with that. But every stage we do, every launch we do, it's an opportunity for us to learn, and it's become a lesson learned. And this is why we believe we have done it many times. The launch is not, this is the first time. The launch has been done many times for us, and we become experienced enough in launching a channel. The question will be here is, are we expert in the America? The answer is we have conducted extensive research. We have talked to thought leaderships, and also we are here since 2006, which is we have enough experience about America. And number 3 or 4 now?
I think it was 2, but go
2,
ahead.
okay. Okay. Number 2, which is very critical. When we cover stories, we look at the human side of the story. The human side of the story, whether you are covering Al-Balkan, whether you are covering the Middle East, whether you are covering America, it is the same principle. The human side element, it is the same principle. It's not different at all. We have experienced it, and we have won award in America. And I will tell you, Al Jazeera English by itself last year won more than 12 serious awards. Kennedy Award, Roosevelt Award, and you name it.
Let's go back over on this side.
Am I smiling, by the way? It's okay? Excellent.
Guy in the striped shirt here, which I will say in full disclosure, is a guy by the name of J.J. Owers, the co-founder of the program that I host. It's called Marketplace.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I think here's the cognitive disconnect that I'm having, which is I listen to everything you say, and then I think about the freedom of press that doesn't exist at the sort of center of your network, at the ownership level, and which is very different from the situation, say, with the BBC. And I wonder if you could talk about that, because I think that's a source of a skepticism about how free your network can be in terms of its coverage.
Correct. Thank you so much.
That barrier I was talking about? That one again.
I don't think
I'm just saying.
I don't think this is a barrier. In my opinion, this is a great opportunity, because if there is a myth, we need to clear it. And this is the type of the dialogue that I will love to do with everybody. Whenever I visit a community, we love to be challenged. We love to be educated. The idea here is, if you remember, I mean, you are talking about the Middle East. We should give, in my opinion, the Emir of Qatar. Al Jazeera all started as a vision of the Emir, and I will tell you that for sure. And number 2, you are looking for the Middle East, who was founded on a state-owned television, state-owned televisions. And in the middle of that area, where you are talking about state-owned journalism, the born of Al Jazeera, where it's not state-owned journalism, it's not state-owned televisions, and to have at that market the freedom of speech and the empowerment of the executive producers to raise all the issues for that area, I think that's unbelievable idea. I think you have to give the credit for that. So if at that age and at that time we were able to do this, the freedom of speech, I think now it's a straightforward. We passed all the challenge and the test that it's been at that time, and I don't think we have a challenge and test anymore.
I wonder if you're splitting hairs, though, right, between state-owned and state-funded. I mean, the Emir of Qatar came out and said, I'm going to pay for this. It is going to be mine, whether I own it or not. This is the root of this company, and that, I would offer, is the genesis of this question, the man's question in the back. That disconnect between what we are used to in this country, which is not state-funded, let's not get away from NPR and public radio aside, right? Apart from that, how do you disconnect those two in American listeners' minds? And I understand that the proof will be in the pudding, that the only way to demonstrate your concept is to demonstrate your concept. But you got to get people watching before you can do that.
No, absolutely. But again, you're asking me this question, but did you ask BBC this question and PBS this question? It's the same model. I don't know why you're still hammering this. And for me, it's no-brainer. It's the same concept. And again, I mean, we are not denying this is a grant is being given for Al Jazeera America, but there is a strong firewall exists with its editorial policy. A strong firewall. I mean, BBC, they have the strong firewall. Al Jazeera America, they have the strong firewall. PBS, they have a strong firewall.
Let's go over here somewhere. Yes, ma'am, in the white sweater there on the table. Microphone's coming to you, ma'am. There you go.
What percentage of Al Jazeera America is staffed by women, and what about Al Jazeera International with women?
I love your questions. One of the key elements here is diversity, diversity, diversity. Okay? And if you can see, I wish I have the press release ready, but I'm going to pause a little bit because I don't want to steal the thunder of the announcement that we're going to make. But I will assure you that we have a huge percentage, and we have roughly, I would say, more than 40% about women. And if you can see the executive producer that we hire, most of them, they are women. I mean, I have Kim Bondi for the flagship show that we are doing. We hired also a couple of talent that it's about to be announced soon. And there is enough female and women exist in our channel. Plus a diversity. You know, we are not just looking for American with different diversity, African American, white, different. So diversity is a critical for us. And this is one of the key success for Al Jazeera English. If you see Al Jazeera English diversity, we have more than 50 nationalities sitting around the world, giving us the flavor of the diversity. And if I can take you to Al Balkan channel, I would love to invite you there. We launch a channel, and Al Balkan, you know, it's Balkanized. And you can see we have people from Serbia, from Bosnia, from Macedonia, and it's a fantastic operating model exists. I'm sorry.
Let's get somebody over here, right here. Yes, sir. Maybe one or two more.
Excuse me. I don't know what portion of the market I represent, but I don't watch television news at all, ever. I get all my news from NPR, from Mr. Ryssdal.
Thank you, sir.
And I get it from the New York Times. But I'm going to disagree with Mr. Ryssdal. I think that Al Jazeera's name is not going to be a problem. I listened to you the other day and then today, and I'm quite curious to see whether you can produce, because if you can produce what NPR produces, which is news, balanced, not screaming at you, relevant, I think there's got a good chance of succeeding. Al Jazeera has a name. It's not a good one, but it's one that I think raises curiosity amongst people like myself. I don't know how big an audience I represent.
All right, so let me ask you a question, sir. How long are you willing to give it? A month, 6 months, a year? And let's just, for the record, this guy's on your side, right? So there you go.
I think that within a month or two, you're going to know whether or not they're covering adequately, and you know, they're not screaming at us, and they're not telling us things that we know, or they're not More importantly, they're not telling us it was 17 times in 10 minutes like Rush Limbaugh managed to do.
Right.
Thank
All right, maybe the last one, right in the middle. Yes, ma'am. Mike's coming to you, right behind you. There you go.
Good morning. Thank you so much for informing us about what you're planning to do. My name is Shelley Porgas, Washington, D.C. I'm the National Finance Co-Chair for the Ready for Hillary PAC. I wanted to ask you that you said that you're going to cover topics that are important to the American people. Clearly, politics is one of those. With the presidential election coming up, we are accustomed
God, it's
to
2016. It's not coming up yet. Sorry.
All right, with whatever election you want coming
All
up
right.
that's important to the American people. What can we expect in terms of your coverage?
Fair
Sure.
question.
Thank you. Just to go back, sorry, for
Yeah,
your
of course.
questions, I would like to invite you just to see Al Jazeera English. If you see Al Jazeera English, you will see a strong content, and it will whet your appetite what you are looking for. And then you can tune for Al Jazeera America. So that's very critical to see Al Jazeera English. And number two, everybody who watch Al Jazeera English, they become loyalists. And if you see the tweets, if you see what Hillary Clinton said, what Rumsfeld said, if you see what McCain said, I think it's a fantastic coverage. And you will not see shouting heads. We are not that type. We are, again, fact-based, informative, unbiased, in-depth. So I think that will whet your appetite hopefully very soon, and you can look at Al Jazeera English now, and you can conclude some judgment about it. Now, regarding the political coverage, what do you expect? First of all, Al Jazeera English did the political coverage. And again, why I'm tapping into Al Jazeera English? Because my product of Al Jazeera America hasn't been launched yet, so I have to give you an evidence and reference. If you look for our coverage of the elections, and the American Standard give us an award. So if that indicates something, that indicates our coverage was in-depth, was giving the different angle of the story, and at the same time, it's try as much as we can to translate to the American audience what that means. Not to take a side, but also inform them about different perspective.
And I think we're done. Thank you all very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.